Hello, sanibonani babukeli, and welcome to this week's episode Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Mbukeli size kuwe bukhoma la kumahamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Igama lami ngo-Alisha intombi yakatshali. Mbukeli yaza sikuvaleli ngaphandle ngokuhamba kwesikhathi sizonivulela phela nani izingcingo ukuthi nibambe iqhaza odabeni esobe silidingida namhlanje. Yazi inamba yethu yase studio 0117146918 noma uzame ku 0117146919. Ungasithumela futhi i-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Uphinde futhi usithinte ku Facebook noma ku Twitter. South Africans are paying a very high price for medicines, and for some medicine, consumers are paying up to 8 times the price compared to countries like India and Brazil. But this could all be a thing of the past if the Department of Trade and Industry has its way. The department has proposed a new policy on intellectual property to stop abusive patents by drug companies, and that is expected to reduce the price of drugs. Lobby groups have welcomed the new proposed policy, but before delving deeper into this discussion, let's take a look at this background insert.
Ukubiza kwemithi kuleli sekuhlele kutheni abantu abagulayo bengayitholi imithi abayidingayo. Lokhu sekudalela nokuthi iziguli ezinama medical aids zingakhona ukuthola imithi nokugcina sokuhlukumeza isimo sempilo zazo nokugcina ke ngokufa kwesinye isikhathi. Ukungaqini komthetho ongamele ukukhiqizwa kwemithi sekwenziwe ukuthi izikhondla zezinkampani ezakha imithi zibambelele ukuthini kube izona zodwa ezakha lemithi. Lokhu ke kudala ukuthi lamafemu enze imali yeningi. Sekuphele iminyaka eminingi izinhlangano ezilwela iziguli zithi uhulumeni akangenelele kulolu daba kodwa lutho. Kodwa ke emva kweminyaka eminingi kwatholakala inkululeko, uhulumeni usenqume ukuthi ayithathele izinyathelo lendaba. Umnyango wezohwebo ufuna kube nomthetho ozongamela ukukhiqizwa kwemithi namanani awo. Nomphakathi nawo uyacelwa ukuthi ubeke imibono yawo ngalokhu. Lokhu ke sekushayelwe izandla elezinhlangano ezingekho phansi kwahulumeni ezilwela amalungelo eziguli. Kuthenjwe ukuthi lolu hlelo luzosiza ukwenza ukuthi imithi itholakale kalula nanokuthi iziguli zingabe zisasokola ukuyithola ngenxa yokubiza. Job Sithole, Yilungelo Lakho.
Siyabonga kakhulu kungalo mbiko. That was from i-producer yethu uJobe Sithole. To take our discussion further namhlanje, let's welcome our guest in studio. Sinaye VIVIAN FRITELLI. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers. We also welcome SIMPHIWE. Yena, he is the Director for Intellectual Property at the Department of Trade and Industry. Kwi-studio sethu saseThekwini siyajabula ukuba noBabulonius Ndlovu yena ophuma kwi-University yaseZululand. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, if I can just start with you, SIMPHIWE, uvela kwi-trade and industry. Awusichazele kahle yini i-patent law?
Well, i-patent law the innovations, if you've got the creation of the mind, it's something which should be new, be novel, and be able to be used in agricultural industry. So you get a bundle of rights there whereby you are protected for a period of 20 years, so as to enjoy the benefits of your creation, after which then the patent expires, goes into the public domain for anyone to use it.
All right. Mr. Fritelli, if you can just brief us, what does patent law mean for pharmaceutical manufacturers?
Well, following on what SIMPHIWE said, manufacturers would create or discover a drug, and then by patenting it, they would have the opportunity of having 20 years of protection that nobody could copy that drug. Once the patent expires after the 20 years, technically then generic manufacturers could copy the drug.
All right. Now, see you studio sethu saseThekwini. Babulani, yes, I understand you currently looking specifically at how ASEAN countries can take advantage of TRIPS flexibilities, which are laws that affect access to drugs. I guess usichazela ukuthi yini ekwenze wena waba nothando laloko kanti futhi yini osukutholile ngaloko busukufundile.
Ngiyabonga msakazi, angibingelele kuwe ngiphinde ngibingelele nababukele emakhaya. Uma ngiqala ukulandela umbuzo wakho kahle, into eyenza ukuthi ngifuna ukubheka lento intellectual property nokuthi imithi ibiza kakhulu ukuthi vele ngangibona ukuthi empilweni lesiphilayo imithi izinto nje sifuna insuku zonke, and ngangivele mina specialize in international trade law, so ngangengafunda about TRIPS and access to medicines, and ngibona ukuthi amazwe lana asathuthuka ikakhulukazi la awe-SADC ayayidinga le mithi, and ngathola ukuthi i-World Trade Organization okuyinhlangano yamazwe, inhlangano yokuhwebelana internationally, ngathola ukuthi inayo imithetho evumela amazwe ukuthi akwazi ukuthi atholisa abantu citizens, really akwazi ukutholisa ama-citizens imithi ngaphandle kokungabaza. And then I discovered as well ukuthi lama TRIPS flexibilities esingathi nje zindlela ezidalwe i-TRIPS agreement lesisivumelwano ese-World Trade Organization ayavumela ukuthi amazwe aphasi imithetho emisha engenza ukuthi athole imithi, kodwa eSouthern Africa ngathola ukuthi amazwe amaningi akasebenzisi, sesitsho neSouth Africa imbala awuthi ngime lapho kwamanje.
All right. Now, Simphiwe, ngicela usichazele, let's talk about what led to the drafting of the proposed policy.
Okay, thanks. In 2008, we went to Cabinet, and Cabinet took a decision that the DTI should lead on intellectual property matters in the country. Having done that, then the decision again was that we need to craft a national IP policy, because we didn't have one prior that.
Yeah, bebangwa yini lokho futhi?
Well, we had the laws, but we didn't have the policy. We were just dealing with intellectual property in a fragmented fashion. So to have a Department of Trade and Industry registering, but there's also the Department of Health, agriculture doing their own thing. So the policy is meant to coordinate the approach of government, both locally, that is nationally and internationally, so that when we negotiate on intellectual property, we speak in one voice. We don't differ with each other and as if we're from different government departments.
Okay. All right. Awusichazele kabanzi-ke ukuthi kule proposed policy kuzobe kwenzakalani kuyona?
Well, the proposed policy ijonge ukuthi coordinate approach yethu to intellectual property matters in the country, and we're also looking at the whole IP arena, for example, because it is dealing with the 4 domains of intellectual property, being your patents, trademarks, copyright, and designs. But there are other intellectual property issues which are cross-cutting in nature. So you'd have the Department of Agriculture having a bit of intellectual property, the Department of Health. So we're trying to coordinate everything so that when we go out, we speak in one voice. But at the end of the day, we're trying to also amend our legislation, because the legislation as we have it now is quite old and outdated, actually, especially in the area of patents. We need to take care of the flexibilities. In the copyright arena, we need to take care of WIPO treaties and update our legislation accordingly. In trademarks, we also need to accede to some treaties, especially in the area of international registration of marks.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically what the policy intends to do and achieve, and that coordination.
Vivian, let's talk about what does this mean for pharmaceutical manufacturers, because we do see that there will be a marginable profit loss for the manufacturers.
Yes, there would be. If we look at the two camps, as it were, you've got the originators and you've got the generic manufacturers. Now, as I said before, the originators have a protection for up to 20 years, and then a generic company can copy it. But what's been happening is this concept of evergreening. We call it evergreening, where they will make minor changes to a product and then apply for extension of patent, which then prevents the generic manufacturers from copying it. Now, the issue with evergreening is that there's usually no therapeutic benefit to the patient. It's usually in the processes of how they actually make the product.
Okay.
And we believe that is unfair to the extent that it's preventing access to medicine for people.
All right. Now, SIMPHIWE, the policy, it also sets a stage for changes that promise to increase competition in the pharmaceutical sector and hence lower the prices of medicines in SA. Now, groups like Section 24, MSF, and what's the other group?
TAC.
TAC, yes. These groups have actually welcomed this proposed policy. What is your say on that?
Well, we are happy if the stakeholders do welcome the policies. It is because our government's got a duty to provide healthcare to its citizens, and therefore, when you look at the issue of intellectual property linked to health, so you need to balance everything, whether people are trying to make profits or not. But the whole idea is, if we have patents in place, they are exorbitantly high. As you say, the medicine gets to be too expensive. So if you can manage to assist the generic companies to enter the market as per the flexibilities which are there, they can enter the market right away, so that bakwazi uzana medication cheaply, so that abantu abasemakhaya, for example, who don't have enough of imali yokuthenga ngoba ke siyagula emakhaya, so we're trying to assist the poor to actually have access to medicines. And those who are unable to get jobs, they can still access medicines.
All right, sizoqhubeka uma sibuya ekhefeni mbukelo kwamanje sithi kuya isitolo, but before we do that, yithi ngimkhumbuza ukuthi phela nani ngabamba iqhaza odabeni lethu lanamhlanje. Our studio numbers are 011-714-6918 noma 714-6919. Our email is consumer@sabc.co.za. You can also visit our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Sinamukele futhi babukeli. Uma ufisa ukuzwakalisa phela umbono wakho, ungashayela la inamba istudio u-011-714-6918 noma 714-6919. Ungasithinta phela ku-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Alternatively, usibheke lapha ku Facebook na ku Twitter. Ake siye eThekwini futhi. Babulani, yes, awusichazele kabanzi about the current administrative and legal imbalances ozibonile kule patent system yamanje.
Okokuqala ngathi mina angiqala ngento ezinhle ukuthi i-policy does now recognize that there's a need for a patent examination process in South Africa, which is basically provided for Section 34 or Act. And then okwesibili iyaku-acknowledge futhi policy ukuthi sesifikile manje isikhathi sokuthi ku-introduce i-compulsory licensing, and ama rules are simple. Ize nje ivele ikhona i-compulsory licensing ku-Section 56, kodwa ayikaze nje isetshenziswe. I-policy yavuma ukuthi kufuneka lawo ma-rules are simplify. And then kukhona futhi okunye ukuthi ize nje kufakwe ngendlela engayithandisisi ukuthi into efana ne-indigenous knowledge, ulwazi lolo lutholakala kuma-communities nalo. Uma uyifunda yonke ipolicy, kuyakhulunywa ukuthi umuntu uma efile i-patent noma i-trademark noma i-copyright, uma leyo copyright noma i-patent ithinta izinto ezinolwazi lwesintu, kofuneka umuntu ay-disclose zonke lezo zinto. Kodwa ke angiye kulokho engithi angikuthandisisi, mhlawumbe engakubiza ngesilungu ngithi ama-shortcomings. Okokuqala ngithi le policy ayikhulumi lutho ngemithi yesintu lena endabuko ke, mhlawumbe inyanga nabantu abaningi emakhaya abayisebenzisayo. And then okunye futhi engikubonile ukuthi iyasho ipolicy ezinye izinto isayitha kwi-TRIPS agreement, iphinde isayithe ku-Doha declaration, kodwa ayikucacisi kahle ukuthi lokho kungena kanjani. bekungaba into enhle ukuthi ngabe le policy iyakubeka ucaca ukuthi i-Doha declaration ithi amazwe angenza 1 2 3 bese ithi ipolicy yethu izoyenza lokho. And then okunye futhi ngikubonile ukuthi ngifunde yonke ipolicy angibonanga any reference to ama-exceptions to patentability relating to research ukuthi abantu kuma-university kuma-research institutions bangakwazi ukusebenzisa i-patent ubengalindi ukuthi 20 years uzuphela for research and experimentation purposes ukwenzela ukuthi kuthuthukise i-technology ezweni lakithi laseMzantsi Afrika. Lezo zinto angiyibona bengathanda ukuthi ngabe zifake kodwa into ejabulisayo ukuthi isayipolicy isayipolicy lento awukabe umthetho. Sethemba ukuthi ke lama public hearings athiwa avuliwe until the 4th of October. Abantu bazokwazi ukuthi babasho lokho abafuna ukusho nakho ke abantu basedetail mhlambe babalalele. Ngisho kanjalo nje manje singabonga.
Okay, siyabonga. Now let's talk about, he touches on a very important issue. Does this the policy doesn't necessarily accommodate traditional medicines. Awusichazele kabanzi futhi Simphiwe ngabe nizobuyeni ibheke le ndaba because kuthiwa it falls under indigenous medicines.
Well, the way sibona ngakhona thina inayo section apho ixela ukuthi indigenous medicines will be accommodated. So because sinomthetho omnye suyelayo eParliament or protection ye indigenous knowledge using the intellectual property system. So if usebenza le system akho need yokuba ngoba indigenous knowledge forms a chapter of this current policy. So yonke into ethetha nge-indigenous medicines will be covered under patents. So we cannot try to explain everything in a policy document because for us it's a document which gives direction, but the rest will be incorporated into the legislation as we proceed after everything.
Okay, and in terms of pharmaceutical manufacturers, Vivian, what does it accommodate traditional medicines? Because I know that apparently it's very hard to measure the inactive ingredients in traditional potions.
Yes. I think, you know, traditionally medicines have to go through clinical trials and there's very little work being done in this country, in fact, in terms of clinical trials on traditional medicines. And that's the only measure really of how well something works. You know, the scientific community want you to prove everything.
Absolutely.
So anecdotal evidence is not good. So I think the DTI have quite a task on their hands to actually formulate legislation around that traditional.
But will you be able to accommodate if there was such a platform for traditional medicines to be actually clinically tested?
Certainly, yes.
And how would one go about that process?
Well, you would have to consider it as conventional medicines basically and go through the same process with clinical trials in patients and prove that it is effective.
All right. Now, Simphiwe, SA currently hands out an excessive number of patents without properly checking validity. And then, will this change? Will we propose new patent law?
Yes, we intend changing that. The current system is now a depository system where we are lodger and then you get registration. And if anyone is interested, will only hire a opposer as court. But now, in a system, as a proposal, like we have, we trademarks, whereby will file an application, a patent. When you file, then we'll introduce a substantive search and examination. So we'll have experts in these fields, as a chemistry and all, and medical medicine. We'll check as to whether information they file is it any different from what is there. Because in the guy, evaluate generic companies, VIVIAN is that. To file application, I enjoy 20 years of benefits, but after 20 years, sneak in something to make sure that it gets another 20 years for the same patent, which is what they patent evergreening. So Londo amakabiso medicines are quite high, and abantu bangakwazi afford. In the current system, sinebola provision. Patient Natalpa. Ebola provision allows you to conduct research so that by the time a patent innovator expires, you are then able to go into the market right away. Okay. We've got that in place, but we didn't mention it in the policy specifically as if it's a new thing because it's already in the legislation. So xa sesicrafta umthetho ke ngoku kulo nyaka ozayo hopefully sizakwazi uba sizifake zonke izinto esifuna usifaka ngokwe-inputs esizazifumana kule process ye-public comments, because after as public comments we'll look at all the comments sibone uba yini, ngoba asizovumelana ke sonke because abakweli cala le-patents ezidurayo abazuviyela yonke le nto, but thina sijonge singurhulumente i-constitution ithi there's a right to health, which we need to observe kakuhle sikwazi ukuba provide this assistance to people who can't afford the medication.
Medicines as well. All right.
I think if I could interrupt, I think that's one of the areas that we're most happiest with the examination point of view, because right now the only way you can challenge a patent is to take it to court.
Absolutely.
And that's so costly. It's really expensive litigation.
Yes.
And I saw something recently that there's only in about the past 10 years, there's only been about 7 patents that have been challenged.
Wow, so it's quite a difficult thing to challenge in court as well. All right, well, for now, let's take another ad break. Mbugeli, please, uhlale nathi. A very warm welcome back, Mbugeli. We're still discussing a newly proposed intellectual property policy by the Department of Trade and Industry, which could see the prices of medicine in South Africa go down. My guests in studio are VIVIAN FRITELLI from the National Association of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers. We also have SIMPHIWE NCWANA. He's from the Department of Trade and Industry. Kanti futhi studio sethu we have Babulonius Ndlovu from the University of Zululand. Babulonius, ake siqale kuwena futhi. Ekuboneni kwakho ucabanga ukuthi le proposed policy is affecta kanjani ama private and public health sectors?
Singaqala nge-public health sector la kunohulumeni khona. Into engayisho ukuthi okwamanje uhulumeni ukhokha imali eshisiwe for imithi enama-patents ebizayo. Ngakho-ke ama-provisions ale policy, especially those dealing with the compulsory licensing, angasiza kakhulu ukuthi uhulumeni ukwazi ukusource these drugs from elsewhere where they are cheap, ikakhulukazi ngasendiya. Ikhonto nje engithanda ukuyichaza ukuthi ngokomthetho we-WTO esithi TRIPS agreement, uhulumeni wasemzansi awuvunyelwa kwamanje ukuthi uvele nje issue ama-compulsory licenses ngoba South Africa is not an LDC. Kodwa ke uma sibheka ngoka section 31 waleyo TRIPS sizothola ukuthi there are so many grounds for issuing of comparison licenses, and one of them is national emergency. And amazwe TRIPS agreement wanikeza a lot of leg room to interpret ukuthi national emergency. And ukuzokhumbulela ukuthi ngokomthetho wase South Africa section 56 odinga ama-comparison licenses, ikhona a provision ethi ama-comparison licenses can be issued on abuse. And kofuneka ke le policy uma isiwumthetho kubhalwe very clearly ama grounds upon which compulsory licenses can be issued, and then that way intengo yemithi ingehla kakhulu and uhulumeni angayifeza ke le right of the citizens to health. And then for i-public sector, I mean i-private sector, so thola ukuthi singathi i-public sector mhlawumbe namanye ama-actors like ama-NGOs bona uma bethenga imithi yabo babathenga ngentengo ephezulwana kunale ethenga uhulumeni. So nakho ke kungaba nomthelelo omuhle lokho lezo lama recommendations ale policy uma engam-implement ukuthi sokuzokwazeka ukuthi kuthengwe imithi lena ngamaxabiso aphansi.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ndlovu. Gentlemen, what is your take? How is it going to affect the private and public health sectors?
Well, I think as regard the public sector, it would open up more players for the government to acquire medicine from if more generics were able to come into the market. And likewise in the private sector, we have this situation where we can prove that just with the number of players in the market, the prices go down just through competition. And that's been a big advantage. And you see, that's why the medical aids are pushing this aspect of generics,
Yes,
because it is pushing the price down, which gives greater access to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read in the reports from the health department that some medical aids will be even able to pay for some cancer medications, which is very expensive. And you can tell us more about that, Vivian, because you directly work with these.
Yes, generally it goes with any kind of medication. Cancer medications somehow seem to be the most expensive.
Yeah.
We have a situation currently where there's a well-known cancer drug which costs in the region of 380,000
a year
for treatment. And once you get diagnosed with that cancer, it's a cancer of the blood, you have to take it for a lifelong situation. And that the medical aids can't afford that, you know, so they've agreed not to pay for that kind of medication. Now, technically, that patent expired in April this year, as far as I know, and a generic manufacturer did come out with it.
Cipla, yes.
But unfortunately, because of this evergreening effect, the company that was responsible for the original medication had a supplementary patent on some kind of process that they had to make the drug. And consequently, it's now patent protected until the
2022.
Correct.
Jeez, that's a long time.
I mean, the issue is that the only way that Cipla can challenge that is to take it to court. Which you could run up a tab for many millions of rand. And the idea is, you know, is it worth it? Is it cost effective to do it? But probably you know, Cipla, a company like Cipla could immediately half the price of that medication. Yeah.
But SIMPHIWE, mucabanga kule policy entsha, will it be easier now to actually oppose lama patents njengobesho ubaba Vivian ukuthi isi extendiwe up until 2022? Will it be easier ukuthi manje ukwazi ukuyi-challenge le decision with the new policy?
Yeah, the policy proposal in place now is that we have a pre- and post-grant opposition system introduced. So if it's in a loan, so was the application class A passile, for example, having gone through examination, for example, then we're able to, anyone from the public can actually oppose that application without going through the e-courts, because it's very expensive. But if you do it internally within the tribunal, DTI, then you go oppose. Otherwise, for now, it's a high hill to climb.
All right.
Difficult. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about if this proposed law comes into effect, who's going to be able, who's going to regulate that the new generic medicines? I mean, if we have a number of suppliers, there's a bigger quantity. Will not the quantity compromise quality?
If I can answer that, we have a very good system in the Department of Health, and I think that's when SIMPHIWE was talking about the interaction between departments, where any generic medicine has to be registered. It's registered to the same degree and the same standards as any originator medicine.
Okay.
The only difference is that the generic company doesn't do the original research. Many people are under the impression that, you know, generic medicine is just put on the market and it's not tested in human beings, which is totally not true. So a generic medicine has to be manufactured under the same circumstances, has to get a license from the MCC before it can be produced in the or sold in the country. And consequently, the standard of quality is excellent.
But SIMPHIWE banozo-ensure ukuthi vele lama generics mangabe nawanikeza ama-patents, they adhere to our standards when?
Well, njengoba Vivian seketshilo, Department of Health is there to assist in that regard, and there are certain standards ekufuna kufikwe.
Awusitshele ngalama prerequisites, if kuzoba nama prerequisites to get a patent.
Well, prerequisite, well, if usithatha nge-patent original, kufuneka ibe into entsha, ibe into evolve inventive step, ube ucreate into njengekho marketing.
Okay.
Or kuba kunento khona marketing, funeka improve it to such an extent that sekuyinto entsha, because sinnovate phezu kwezinto esesikade zikhona most of the time. So phinde ibe into ezakwazi usebenza kwi-agriculture nakushishini.
Okay.
Yes, so zizo i-steps ekufuneka i-requirements ekufuneka zimithiwe ngabantu xa bafuna upatenta izinto. Then in the case ye-generics, ngoba sesinawo umthetho sipropose ke ngoku that izinto zenzeke sisebenzise as flexibilities as contained ku-TRIPS agreement. ezi-affectabilities enye yazo i-search and examination ibe enye yazo into yokuthi kusetyenziswa i-border provision so that umuntu athi sene-patent sikwazi uresearcha kuyo i-generic company by the time phela if i-patent iphelelwa ngo-12 ebusuku after 20 years kufanele ke ngoku i-generic company ibe senazo izinto zayo in place ifake emarketini so kuba busoyisakala uzoluthenga iyeza ekuseni uvuka ukwazi ulithenga ngexabiso eliphansi.
All right, well, thank you very much. Okwamanje mbukela siphinde sibuyele itolo. Please don't go away. Samukele futhi babukeli sisakhuluma ngomthetho omusha okubheka ukuthi ubekwe ukuze phela wehlise amanani esithenga ngawo imithi. Ungashayela la e-studio inamba zethu 0117146819 noma ushayele ku 7146919. Ungasithinta futhi ku-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Gentlemen, let's talk about the pricing and the innovation of medicines. We know that South Africa has the Department of Health has in fact saved about it allowed a tender that allowed the department to save on ARVs by 53% just last year alone, and this means and as you know now they're not taking the multiple pills, they're only taking one pill, meaning that medicine is evolving. What does it say about other generic medicines that will now come and compete in the market?
I think this is a slightly different aspect to the patenting because most of the ARVs, local companies that supply them do it under voluntary license. In other words, the originators have allowed them to manufacture locally, thus reducing it. So as our colleague in Durban said that there was an opportunity to do compulsory licensing. The companies, I think, knew that there was this threat, so they've agreed with voluntary licensing. And I think also must be said that in view of their feeling towards the consumer, that they've gone the step that's enabled it to be cheaper. And then because there are multiple players, the department's able to play off one against another to get the best price.
All right, Putsipiwe?
Yebo. Well, kuqala lethu sithi i-patents ezi zenza amaxabiso omayeza abe phezulu kakhulu kodwa ke i-generics ziza kahle zithoba amaxabiso so kule case yase Department of Health where they saved a lot of money ayidibena ngancam nendaba ye-patenting kodwa ke into eyenzeka voluntarily because sinale ndaba ye-compulsory licensing. Also want to introduce actually parallel importation whereby if a manufacturer up a country is supplying medication, I would make an example, say 10 rand per pill, and yet you are taking say India, same patent holder, you are taking say India, get rand, kuba amaxabiso aphansi uhulumeni angakwazi ba athenge pha India ayizise apha even though law ena rights apha country so sikwazi ba sifikele amaxabiso sezantsi for abantu balapha South Africa. So yes.
All right, ake siye kuye uBabulonius Ndlovu. Babulonius, wena mayibhekile le proposed policy ucabanga ukuthi izobasiza kanjani ama consumers abala eSouth Africa?
Ngibona ukuthi izobasiza ngokuletha competition enkulu ukuthi kuzenza ukuthi babe nama choices which are wider, I mean, of the medicines they can purchase. And then the other thing engibona ukuthi nayo izosiza futhi ekuthini ama pharmaceutical companies ashintshe i-attitude yawo lena yokuthi athi wona aspend imali eshisiwe ku research bengasitshela ukuthi ihamba kanjani kodwa bese befaka nje price abayifuna. Lokho kungenzeka kube a thing of the past. And then enye into engifuna ukuyisho futhi engicabanga ukuthi ibaluleke kakhulu kulolu daba esikhuluma ngalo ukuthi nje lento ama voluntary license enye into ebalekile ukuthi uhulumeni lo mthetho ungaphasisa uhulumeni angakwazi ukunegotiate nama drug companies instead of ukusebenzisa labo o compulsory license uhulumeni approach ama pharmaceutical companies directly asho ukuthi besicela nisehlisele intengo uma kwenzeka. And then okunye futhi ukuthi ama parallel imports vele njengoba eshilo loza kwethu osuka e-DTI ukuthi ama parallel imports ayavunyelwa nawo. Enye indlela futhi engasiza ama consumer ukuthi uhulumeni abheke ukuthi lama drugs afuneka kakhulu ashiphe kuphi emhlabeni bathenge khona ke. So uma sibhekisa nje yonke ipolicy in a holistic way, it's really empowering the consumer in the context that there will be competition, there will be wider choices, and then our prices definitely azoyehla, and then i-right to health will be realized.
All right, siyabonga. Simphiwe, usichazele kabanzi i-difference between compulsory and voluntary licenses.
I-compulsory license lethi if unalo iyeza olenza yapha ekhantrini so ne-patent, siyakwazi ke ngokusengurhulumente sibona uba zikhona ingxaki njengezigulo ezikhoyo qha ke le compulsory license ngesinayo ayisebenzeki ngoku, that's why sizama uyilungisa kumthetho omtsha. But kuba ndi-owner i-patent for example and i-prices zam are 8 times more or 10 times more than the recommended price in other places in the world, urhulumente angaqonda uba khona ingxaki apha, mhlawumbi kugulwa kunesigulo esitsha and unalo iyeza uyalidolirisa, urhulumente angafaka i-compulsory licensing anike umuntu omnye ongalenzela yeza ethe lesser price, sikwazi uba silungise lo ngxaki ekhoyo ngelo xesha in terms of izigulo. I-voluntary licensing esiwe umuntu enganyanzelwa just aze ngaphambili athi ndingancedisa apha kuba ninengxaki yesigulo esinje ndiyancedisa, ndiza nayo i-patent yam, they are allowed to use it at a lesser price. Umahluko lowo.
All right, okay. Vivian,
yes.
Let's talk about, in terms of educating the public about these patent laws. Do you feel that there is enough education? Because I'm sure people are still wondering what this patent law or proposed policy is.
Yes, I can speak for our members. I think even among the companies, there's confusion. It's a highly technical subject, and I think the policy at least will simplify things. I think, and if when the legislation comes in terms of in the context of the policy, there'll be more direction to it and more understandable, I think.
And Simphiwe, is there any means DTI has put forward ukuthi ni educate kabanzi ama consumers ngale policy?
Yes, currently, besides policy, we've got education drives and we get to meet up with stakeholders, state and us. But ngoku policy njengoba sikhuphile iphumela the general public comment kuyo ichoke by ifuna ntoni babona ntoni, otherwise asikhulelanga nje for i-patent holders zodwa nabantu be-generics, wonke umuntu uvulelekile ba abhale into ecingayo kuba yenzani ngolhlobo nasisombululo.
Bakwenza kanjani lokho eButsimphiwe?
Bawuthi ke babhale bangazibhala electronically zimelelwa ku Mission Padayashi i-colleague pha e-ofisini, email address yakhe ngu M Padayachi, manje spell of Padayachi it's PADAYACHY.
Okay.
At the dti.gov.za okanye umuntu ongenayo i-opportunity yokusebenzisa i-email angayibhala i-comments zakhe azithumele ngeposi to u-Director General we-DTI ku-Private Bank X84 ePretoria, i-code ngu-0001.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, mbukeli sizokupha amanye ama details uma sibuya emva kwaleli khefu ngayindawo. Really welcome to our very last segment. We are still talking about a new proposed legislation on South Africa's patent laws, which is expected to bring down the price of medicine. I guess Babulania sicela uvalelise nje okugcina yini ofuna ukuyibona iyenzeka kahle kahle kule policy.
Ngingathi nje ngingathanda ukubona ukuthi most of the major provisions in this policy, I would want to see them, being implemented in the form of legislation, and then and see as well that there's more public education. People who are likely to be affected. It's quite a serious matter relating to drugs here. So I would want to see the public consultation process being simplified, like something similar to what happened when the Access to Information Bill was being, when Parliament had actually to convene a special ad hoc committees that went to the communities ukuthi abantu bafundise ngalowo mthetho lo. Ngoba umthetho obaleka ngakufuneka iSouth Africa yonkana nje kube nama public outreach engibona ngathi into yokuthi kubhalele DTI njengoba uzakwethu eshilo wase DTI izinto ezingenziwa abanye abantu labangathi babafundile mhlawumbe bahlala endaweni abane access kwama email and so kodwa abantu the ordinary people bangafuna nabo ukusho into abafuna ukuzisho ngalo mthetho. So bengithi kungcono public consultation process ibe simplified and the whole of South Africa must kind of have an input. And then a period of submissions as well until 4 October. Mhlambe if ungatholakala extension angazi ke noma ingatholakala ukwenza ukuthi abantu ngempela bathi their input has been submitted for this policy.
Sibonge kakhulu kuwe uBabulonius Ndlovu estudio sethu saseThekwini. But SIMPHIWE naye he's calling for this ukuthi simplifying ngempela because I don't think abantu baya understand and it affect abantu lento. Is there anything any means DTI izoyifaka phambili ukuthi ba educate before be comment and usichazele futhi if there's an extension on the date for public participation?
Okay, ndiyabulela. Currently i-date yokufaka comments sibala ngokwe business days excluding weekends and public holidays. So the real date to submit, the last day is the 17th of October. Ku notice government gazette iphume isithi 4th of October babale insuku nje ezizenyanga yonke. So it's up to the 17th of October. Iplan yethu ibikuba siye kuzo zonke provinces sithethe nabantu but ngenxa yexesha elifitshane yonke into sazama invite stakeholders start comments but sizawucela ke from a public outcry that mhlambe singafumana extension whereby we'll just do provinces zonke sithethe nabantu in one big room sive views zabo. Yes, otherwise when it comes to into education DTI kule police ekhoyo city they will create education and awareness on intellectual property because uthi somdala undoda ephangelayo ungazazi ezi patents noba ukhosa emakhaya. So what we intend doing now ngoba sifumana sesiko university yonke lento izawuqala e-primary kunyuke nayo kwezikolweni ukuya nase-varsity, so everybody shall create a low capacity. But now what we're doing mostly is to ukwenza road shows sithethe nabantu sibacacisele siya kwi-provinces zonke especially besinale bill traditional knowledge kulapho sithethe nabantu kuzo zonke iinkalo zale country sicacise i-patents is. So we're hoping to do more as time goes on.
And then menbuka kahle kahle, let's say i-policy senwathathile ama public comments ba i-expectancy yokuthi le policy iyiswe ku-legislation, what's the time frame like?
As we have it now, asifuna extension or co request extension kodwa ke umhlekazi eNatal sayicele extension for example. So say sigqiba ngo end of November. Sizawusebenza ke incorporate as comments into the policy. Ke yonke abantu bazawubhala into ezininzi asinakwazi uthatha yonke into but sizawuzicompile zonke ezi comments sizithathe sizise eParliament so kube nomuntu ozawujaja whether we did justice to the document. So saya ne comments ne policy si-improve leyo ngoba ise draft until we get to the final. So eParliament bazayijonga ke le document yethu versus the comments which were given. And then they will either tell us, hey, you did injustice, go back and work harder,
do
or else you did well, proceed. Then get cabinet is I approve. But yonke into esiyirhalelayo kwi-police kwi-legislation funeka ibhalwe phaa epolicing. I-police isinika nje statement esikhulu, this is what we intend to do. So by the time we craft the legislation, most of the things will be incorporated into the legislation.
Okay.
And everyone will be happy.
Thank you
We're
very
hoping.
much. Will you be happy, Vivian?
Yes, I think we will. If the legislation goes through as we hope it to go through, it would open up the chances for more generics, which would mean more competition, which would mean cheaper prices, and obviously then patients would benefit. And we wouldn't have all these spurious patents. We'll have a proper examination situation.
And now, it's public speculation that the pharmaceutical industry is not really happy about this. Is this the general notion because of the profit loss there?
I don't. Probably originator companies might be upset, but South Africa relative in pharmaceutical terms is a small market. You know, so I don't suppose they'll be losing too much. But on the other hand, health is a right, and we must do our best for that and try and get
justice to our health system. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me in studio. We wish we could go on and on this very important topic. I would like to thank our studio guests, Bonge futhi naye uBaba Lonyasi studio, for their time. Sithande futhi ubonga nani babukeli ukuthi nibe nathi kuze kube manje. Please join us again next week Friday for another live consumer topic of the week. Ukubheka phela impilo ezinhlelo zethu masitangane la kumahamba phambili SABC 1 eMzansi for sure njalo ngomsombuluko ekseni kusukela ku 9:30 kuya ku 10:30. From myself, Alicia Jali, and the entire team, it's goodbye. Nisale kahle.